catechesis itself has 4 parts. Do we remember what they are? All right. The first one is the creed. Right. We go through the content of the first is the creed. Then it's the 7 sacraments. Right. The 7 sacraments. Then it's life in Christ. It's the moral life. Lastly, it's the Our Father. All right. So it would be great if you want to know, like, hey, did I pass RCIA? Like, did I do good enough in class? Here's what you need to do. Memorize the Nicene Creed. Memorize the 7 sacraments. Memorize the 10 commandments. And memorize the Our Father. You probably have the Our Father memorized already. But if you can say that, I know, I actually have those memorized, I can call upon them whenever I want to, that's a great step in catechesis. Like, that's, you've done something. Right? Especially memorizing the creed. I think it's really important that we do that. Memorization has always been a part of catechesis. Even the 10 Commandments, which we're going to start going through tonight, in the 15th century they had rhymed versions of the 10 Commandments. So you can sing them. Why? So you can memorize them. Why? So you can live them. Right? They had little songs. And I don't know of any today. Maybe there's some YouTube stuff about this. And I feel like Protestants would probably do this better than us. But this is what they did, so they can memorize the faith. Okay, so keep working on this until the Easter Vigil and even after the Easter Vigil. These things, right? What are the 7 sacraments? We should know them, right? Let's go through them. Right? I want you to answer. What are the 7 sacraments? Who can name one? Dorian.
Baptism.
Baptism. Okay. What comes after baptism? Confirmation. Then you're going to receive First Communion, like the Holy Eucharist. Then, if you decide on your vocation, you're going to be ordained to the priesthood, or maybe you're going to receive holy matrimony, sacrament of holy matrimony. Then, if you get sick, you receive the anointing of the sick, right? And the last one is one that you can receive again and again and again. What's that one?
Reconciliation.
Reconciliation, right? Reconciliation, Holy Communion. We receive those again and again and again. The other ones, we only receive once. Sacrament of matrimony, maybe if your spouse dies, you receive it again. Okay. Okay, but that's how we really want that, to know our faith in that way, okay? All right, tonight, the 10 Commandments. And this is kind of what if somebody asks me, what did you learn in, like, catechism growing up? I was like, I remember the 10 Commandments. You know, I remember the teacher in the big, like, plastic board, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? The 10 Commandments. This is what we have to learn, right? Jesus says, if you would enter life, keep the commandments. Jesus says that. If you would enter life, keep the commandments. So they're very, very important, right? We don't throw them out with the new covenant. Jesus takes them deeper. He goes deeper into them. The Catechism says that Jesus unfolded all of the demands of the commandments. He unfolded, right? Until he arrived, some things were still folded shut. Some of the depths of the commandments were folded shut, right? And Jesus came to unfold them, right? And we know this from a very classic passage in the Sermon on the Mount, right? Matthew chapter 5. Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said to the men of old, 'You shall not kill.'" Right? That's which commandment? 5th commandment. You shall not kill. "You have heard that it was said to the men of old, 'You shall not kill.' But, and whoever kills shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother shall be liable to the council. And whoever says, 'You fool,' shall be liable to the hell of fire." Okay? You see that Jesus takes the commandment and goes deeper, right? Same thing with, especially the commandment on adultery, right? Jesus says, "He who looks at a woman with lust has committed adultery in his heart." Right? So Jesus takes them, he deepens them. Okay? The 10 Commandments are given to us in essentially the 2 tablets. Okay? The first 3 commandments refer to the duties to love God. The last 7, the duties to love our neighbor. Okay, this is how they're kind of broken up. Right? So, which are the commandments? Are they a burden or are they a gift? They're a gift, right? Well, except when they're hard, right? Then they're a burden. Right? No, they're still a gift. Right? No, they're a gift. Why are they a gift? When do they arrive? When does God reveal them? It's in the context of a story. Right? It's the story of Exodus. Right? The story of Exodus. The Israelites are given the gift of the Ten Commandments in the context of a story. Right? So when God gives the Ten Commandments, this is what he says. The first preface to the commandments is this: I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Right? Then the Ten Commandments come. Okay. So he's saying, first of all, look, remember what I've done for you. Remember that place of slavery I brought you out of. Now, in that light, read these Ten Commandments. Right? And you will see they are much easier than making bricks without straw and being put to severe slavery by Pharaoh and having your children killed by Pharaoh. All of that happened. Right? These commandments are my gift to you. Right? This is how you can remain close to me. All right? So the commandments are never just rules given by a distant God, but they're a gift from God saying, this is how you can respond to me. This is how you can be close to me. You don't have to wonder. Right? You can follow these commandments. Now, in the story of Exodus, God creates his people. Right? In Genesis, the first book, he creates the world. In Exodus, he creates his people. He creates Israel. Right? And so he brings them out of Egypt, and he establishes with them a covenant. Right? A covenant. And a covenant is this bond that's created, a family bond, where no previous family bond existed. It's to be adopted. It's to be brought into God's family. That's what a covenant is. All right. And so, did you have rules at your house growing up? No rules. Just free for all. And you were like, you were just a really good kid. Didn't need your rules, right?
That was like.
There's always family rules. And this is how we want to think of the commandments. These are the house rules. These are the family rules. Right? These are the laws of the covenant. Right? The book of Exodus has, we're going to go into the book of Exodus a little bit just to paint the background of the Ten Commandments. Right? And if you want to watch The Prince of Egypt after this, you'll get more of a refresher. Right? Okay. But the book of Exodus has these three parts, right? First is liberation. Second is legislation, right? God brings them to Mount Sinai and gives them the commandments. And the third part is liturgy, meaning that they're finally able to worship God. That's the whole goal of Exodus. It's God bringing his people to a place where they can worship him, where they can serve him. Right? They were serving Pharaoh. Now they're serving God. But that word serve really means to worship. Okay? And we remember the story of Moses. Right? Moses, who was threatened by that same Pharaoh. Threatened because Pharaoh was going around killing all the Israelite children. Right? Moses is saved by his mother. He's put into the basket and floated down the river. And who finds him? Pharaoh's daughter. Right? And so Moses grows up as Pharaoh's grandson. Right? And Moses is that chosen instrument of God. Moses is chosen by God to liberate the Israelites. This happens at that key event. Passover event. There's all the plagues and everything, but the key event is that Passover event. All right. Finally, they leave, right? They arrive at Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, I want to read this. This is Exodus chapter 19. Right, the Ten Commandments are Exodus chapter 20. But right before that, God begins to, again, create his people, right? Create Israel. And he starts to use some very familial language. Okay? So Exodus chapter 19, verses 3 through 6. And Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the sons of Israel, You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my own possession among all peoples. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. These are really stunning words that God says to Moses. Right? Tell the Israelites, they shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. In the Old Testament, to be a priest was something inherited. Right? So if God is telling the Israelites, you will be a kingdom of priests, he's telling them, you will be my children. Right? To be a priest is if your father was a priest. That's how it was passed, through inheritance. Right? To have a kingdom of priests. You see that? Means that they are the children of God. They are inheriting in a sense, God's priesthood. He's sort of adopting them by making them priests. And just an aside, remember that in baptism we are all baptized into the priesthood of Christ, right? The baptismal priesthood. So every baptized soul has this priestly character, has the ability to offer sacrifice, spiritual sacrifice. It's distinguished from the ministerial priesthood, but it's still a real priesthood, a real power that the baptized have. Okay? Now, here's the big thing, right? God uses this small word. Where's it at? If. If. Right? It's a very important word. Not if. If you keep the commandments, you shall be this, right? That's it. Right? That is the key word. Right? If you follow the commandments, you will be holy. In fact, you will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Holy meaning you will be set apart from the other nations. This is God's plan for Israel. Okay, but we know it doesn't take long where the Israelites don't follow God. It takes something like 3 weeks or something after they get the Ten Commandments. Moses is up on a mountain, right? They worship the golden calf. Right? It doesn't take long at all. And then, where's it going with this? Right, they have the story of Moses prays for the Israelites, he intercedes for them, God spares them, he gives them a new set of commandments. New tablets, everything's good, right? Moses broke the first ones. He got mad. But God rewrote them for them. And we have them. They've been passed on to us, at least in the book of Exodus. Traditionally, the tablets were thought to be put in the Ark of the Covenant. Where's the Ark of the Covenant? I don't know. I'm not sure. So, okay? They claim to have it. All right. So, that's kind of the background of the commandments, okay? In church tradition, as I mentioned, it's common that these are memorized, right? In the catechism here, it's got Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5, and then a traditional catechetical formula. So there's two places in the Bible you can find the Ten Commandments: Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy chapter 5. Okay? And then they're sort of slimmed down into this easy to memorize formula. So there you go. That's your work the next week, right? Memorize the Ten Commandments. Okay. Right, and just to reiterate that from the beginning, the church fathers saw Jesus as someone who amplified the commandments. Right? St. Irenaeus says, far from being abolished, the commandments have received amplification from Jesus. Right? Even more we must follow them. He deepened them. Right? And there's a unity to them. There's a unity. Right? The love of God and love of neighbor are really one love. Right? If we don't love our neighbor, who we do see, we cannot love God who we do not see. So essentially, if you break one commandment, you break all of them. That's kind of the way to think about it. They stand together, these 10. Okay? Right? If I do not keep the Sabbath, I fail in my love for God. So in a sense, you break the third commandment, you break the first commandment. Okay? They are a unity. And they bring together, this is very important, they bring together our religious life and our social life. Okay? And we need all 10. Because maybe some days you just want to love God, and you don't want to love anyone else. Okay? Or you don't really want to love God, you just want to love this person here. Right? But the commandments cover all of them. Right? And it brings together our religious life and our social life. Right? Both talents coming together. Okay. Lastly, as a background, the Ten Commandments are not particular to the Bible. Okay, other cultures, other religions have come up with pretty close imitations of the Ten Commandments. Okay, the Ten Commandments you want to think of as this privileged expression of the natural law, okay, of the law written on the heart. People can arrive at these by the light of their own natural reason. It's not easy. That's why God reveals it to us. Okay, and in fact, sin made it even harder and almost you would say necessary. The Catechism says necessary for them to be revealed. Right? But there's two ways of arriving at the Ten Commandments. One is revelation, right here. Somebody gave you the Bible, you picked it up, you read it, the Ten Commandments. Oh, or even to RCIA class, right? You're receiving revelation. Or just from your own conscience, from your own, the law written on the heart, which we went through right, last week. Okay? So you might read the Ten Commandments for the first time, you're like, hey, I've been doing this, more or less, right? And I never knew. These are the Ten Commandments. Well, that's great. That's because it's this law written on your heart. It's not some foreign, weird Ten Commandments that set Christians apart, you would say. Now, Jesus deepens them to this extent that's pretty particular, I would say. Not sure how many people in the world have talked about the Ten Commandments as Jesus did. Probably not too many. Right, who else has said, whoever looks at a woman with lust has committed adultery in his heart? I doubt anyone. But you can prove me wrong on that. I'm not sure. Okay? I'm guessing that's particular to Jesus. Okay? But they are not, again, don't want to think of them as something that only we have or that they're these odd commandments. No, they're what perfect the human person. And again, to follow the commandments is necessary, right? To follow them, to be close to Jesus, we must follow them. Right? Jesus says, "If you love me, keep my commandments." Right? And on the flip side, though, we can only keep them with Jesus. We can only keep them if we are enlivened by His grace, if we are helped by His grace. Like Jesus says this, apart from me, you can do nothing. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Right? That's our Lord. That's Jesus. Okay? We need Him to follow the commandments. Right? And this is where the sacraments come in big time to help us. right, with grace. Right, we're not here just to learn some rules and follow them. No, most of you are here to receive sacraments, which is to receive help from God, some serious help, some necessary help to follow the commandments. Okay, now we're going to get into them. Okay, so that's a little background on the 10 Commandments. Now we're getting into them. All right, we're doing all right. So the first commandment, you shall worship the Lord your God, and Him only you shall serve. This is the first commandment. Other way to put it is, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a graven image, or any likeness of anything that is heaven above or on earth below, or the water under the earth. You shall not bow unto them or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of fathers upon the children of the third and fourth generation. On and on it goes. Right? I am the Lord your God. You shall not have strange gods before me. That's another way to put it. Okay, this is the hardest one to follow. It's definitely the hardest commandment. Definitely. Right? To serve only God. Oh, to serve only God. Right? It's the hardest to keep. Right? And we keep this first commandment by these acts of faith, hope, and love. Right? There's always a connection between the first commandment and the 3 theological virtues. Right? So you could say that we, again, like the virtues, it's easy to talk about how you make mistakes. Right? It's easy to talk about how you make mistakes when we talk about the commandments. So we're going to kind of go through the sins against the commandments and use that as a way to learn about them. Okay. One way to put it is that we keep the first commandment by faith, hope, and love, and we fail to follow the first commandment when we sin against faith, hope, and love. All right, so can anyone tell me a sin against faith? What would be a sin against faith? How about superstition? Who's superstitious in here? Just a little bit? Not at all? A little bit. A little bit. So athletes are the worst at this. When I was, I'm not kidding you, in 5th grade football, I did not wash my undershirt for 7 years. It had a panda bear on it. It said "barely surviving," and I loved it. It was my favorite shirt. I mean, people, I can't believe I got away with it. Like, the other team probably smelled me from a mile away. Maybe I didn't sweat that much in 5th grade. I don't really know. All right, that's a sin against faith. Okay. No, I mean, not really. It's some superstitious practices are worse than others, you could say. But at the end of the day, superstition or magic seeks some type of certainty that we shouldn't have, that we shouldn't seek after. Okay. Now, if you need your routine, okay, you need your routine. I'm not saying get rid of your routines, okay, but superstition is a sin against faith, like tarot cards or even horoscopes, things like that. Going to these people who want to tell you about what your ancestors are doing in heaven. I don't know, this is happening a lot in rural areas. I just found about this lately. Yeah, there's like, I don't know what it is, but they go around and they claim to be able to say, hey, you lost your son, but I know how he's doing. I'll tell you. Something like that. And I feel like they're kind of preying on people who are in really rural areas that maybe don't have a high level of education and don't have a priest around. Okay. So I want to go out there and get them. Yeah, I thought about it. They're like in my hometown. St. John Vianney said, if you leave a town without a priest in 10 years, they'll be worshiping the cows. Something like that. So I didn't believe that until I found out this was happening. So I think I believe it more now. But superstition is a sin against faith. Magic, things like that, things that try to master the future, things that try to take the place of God. Faith is our walk through life. We don't know what's coming. We have to live by faith. Okay. Yeah, that's why I pray going up State Street a lot. Incredulity is just the kind of persisting in a doubt, or really not seeking to answer the questions of your doubts, just dwelling in your doubt and giving into your doubts. It's not a sin to have doubts, but to remain in them without answers is a sin of incredulity. Okay, these are sins against faith. All right, the other sins against faith are some that are a little more technical, but like heresy, apostasy, and schism. Like heresy is usually someone who's really educated and really thinks something's true that is not true, and persists in teaching this error. They're called a heretic. All right. Apostasy is actually just totally rejecting the Christian faith, not saying you're not a Christian anymore. A heretic still thinks they're a Christian. They just persist in an error, in actually teaching the error. And then the other sin would be schism, where you kind of basically start your own church. You are in schism where you're not in union with the Holy Father. Okay, and that's the sin of schism. Okay? Okay. Any questions about the sins against faith? Okay. Sins against hope are really easy. There's just two. Right? To despair. Right? To give in to despair, or to presume that you are good on your own, that you're good on your own power, or you presume that God is merciful, so you commit sin, or you commit the sin of thinking that you are already saved or guaranteed your salvation. That is the sin of presumption. Okay, and then again, these are against that first commandment where we must love God and serve only God. All right, and if we despair, we no longer see God's goodness. And if we presume, we no longer see our own need for God. It's kind of a quick way to put it, but I think it works. All right. Now, lastly, sins against charity. All right. These are quickly your indifference, meaning not really caring about God at all. We neglect to think of God. Ingratitude, we neglect to thank God. Lukewarmness, right? We persist in a state of no response to God. We don't act to His promptings. We don't follow Him. Acedia is an interesting one. It's called spiritual sloth. Now, actually, it's kind of related to despair, but it's a sin against love. It's what it is sadness in the face of God's goodness. It's called the noonday devil. It's kind of like when you get to the middle of the day and you're like, I don't want to do anything. So I sit here, blah. Like that's a sin, right? It's called acedia. And this is cool. Some saints who have fought against acedia, they're like, they sometimes have to like work themselves through it. And there's one saint, I think it was Saint Jerome, who said, I will look at the cracks in this wall for Jesus, or something like that. Like he was maybe just in a state of tiredness or boredom or something. But he made this act of his will. Like, I will look at the cracks in this wall for Jesus. Like, I will love you, God, even though I may not feel it. And that's a real way to work against acedia. Lastly, there's the sin of just hatred of God, which is unfortunate in I don't think it's too prevalent. Maybe it is, but it is a sin, obviously, to have hate of God. All right, so those are the sins against the first commandment. Sort of interesting, kind of fun. Now, how do we follow the first commandment? What do we actually do? What positive thing can we do to serve God, to love God, to worship the Lord your God? What do you think? All right. It's too easy one. It's prayer. Prayer and adoration. This is how we follow the first commandment. We pray. Right? And we exercise that virtue of religion. Remember that religion in the Christian tradition is a virtue. It's a power. It's something we must exercise. We must act to follow the first commandment, which means we must pray. Okay? Prayer is simply lifting up our minds to God. Right? And no one did this better than Mary, right? Mary, the mother of Jesus, who said, "My soul magnifies the Lord." She is that example of prayer and adoration. Right? Other ways to fulfill the first commandment is to sacrifice, or to offer sacrifice. Right? And we do this mainly by prayer and penance, but by uniting ourselves to the sacrifice of Jesus. Right? St. Paul says it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. There's a prayer, adoration, sacrifice. There's other ways to fulfill the first commandment, which are kind of fun to think about. Making promises, making vows to God. These are things you can do to show your seriousness of following God. Like we know that St. Paul made a vow. We're not sure what he actually vowed, but well, part of it had to do with like cutting his hair or something. It's in the Acts of the Apostles. But he's like, since St. Paul cut his hair because he fulfilled his vow or something. But traditionally, promise goes with baptism. Right? You'll have your baptismal promises that you make. Right? And I think actually tonight after the scrutiny, I'll go through those with the catechumens. And everyone who's already baptized, you'll renew these at the Easter Vigil, right? And they're very basic, right? Do you reject Satan? I do. And all his works? I do. And all his empty promises? I do. Do you believe in Jesus Christ? I do. These are your baptismal promises. I made promises at my diaconate ordination. I promised to, let's see if I remember these. I don't remember these.